Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of the Connect the Dots NYC podcast. I'm your host, Vedant Vohra, and I am so excited to take you on this journey as we explore different solutions to homelessness. As a creator of the CTD NYC app, I've seen how technology can connect people to vital resources. CTD NYC helps individuals experiencing homelessness in New York City access shelters, food, and healthcare, bridging the gap between them and essential services. It's a powerful example of innovation meeting compassion to tackle the homelessness crisis. Each episode will dive into stories, strategies, and innovations from those on the front lines, whether they're advocates, policymakers, service providers, or individuals with lived experience. My goal is to spark meaningful conversations and shine a light on the incredible work being done to make housing more accessible for everyone. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get started. Our guest today is Nelly Stastny. Nelly Stastny is the director of Miracle Money at Miracle Messages. Miracle Messages is a nonprofit committed to ending relational poverty and advancing housing stability by reconnecting unhoused individuals with loved ones and delivering innovative programs like guaranteed income. Nelly joined the team in 2021 and now leads the design and execution of Miracle Money, the organization's direct cash transfer service. Based in Seattle, she brings years of experience in case management and program implementation, and she has played a major role in building the structure behind Miracle Messages' growing basic income efforts. From early pilots to a large-scale randomized control trial and their newest community-centered distribution models, Nelly has been at the center of Miracle Money's evolution. She's passionate about exploring not just how guaranteed income can change lives, but how relationships and support systems can make that change more lasting and meaningful. Welcome, Nelly. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited to talk.
So before we get into Miracle Money, I'd love to start with your own story. What brought you into this work and what keeps you grounded in it?
Yeah, I think to a large extent, it almost fell into my lap. It really feels like where I'm meant to be. I've been doing service and nonprofit work since really my early teens. I've always felt deeply impacted by the inequities that I've seen. I grew up always hearing of, my own family's immigration story from Cuba to the US, and I felt this sense of guilt, right? People sacrificed so much for me. They went through so much pain and suffering for me to live what felt like a very easy and privileged life. And it got to the point where when I envisioned myself existing in this world, I couldn't imagine myself not using the privilege that I have to uplift others and try to address the inequities and the inequities that I benefit from, right? Like really actively working towards not only uplifting others, but empowering through that work. And so basic income and specifically working in homelessness, the path really found itself to me. The exciting part almost about it, which is maybe not the exact right word choice, but the part that drew it to me about it the most is homelessness really encompasses so many different disenfranchised communities. And so when I envisioned myself working towards addressing inequities, it's almost like homelessness is all encompassing of all of these systematic failures that now you get to come in and do some really unique problem solving around. Something that keeps me very grounded in the work is knowing so many of us are one emergency or one trauma away from being in that exact position. Right now I'm on the program side, but not much separates me from being a participant in a lot of these settings. And just keeping that as a core, truly seeing people as human beings, and staying grounded in that community to do the work.
You were originally doing street outreach in San Francisco, but have since transitioned to a different role. Can you tell us more about that shift and what your work looks like today in Seattle?
Yeah, I did street outreach in San Francisco and the Bay Area for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was doing case management services with people experiencing what would be considered chronically homeless in Sonoma County, which is just north. Uh, during that time, Miracle Messages were still a pretty young organization. We've been around for about 10 years. And so when I joined, we are constantly going through these phases of trying to see what works best for us and what causes the most impact. And so at that time, we were really seeing what does it look like to do street outreach. Now with this phase in Seattle, I'm able to work remotely and I'm able to manage and work our basic income programs and to really build off managing partnerships and relationships, because we're finding that that's how the impact is being most felt, is by leaning into people that are doing the work and doing it really well, and joining them in that.
I now want to get into, as some might say, the nitty gritty. So I want to understand basic income and really what Miracle Money does. And so a lot of people may have heard the term basic income, but neither them nor I fully understand what it is. And so can you please explain what guaranteed income means and how Miracle Message defines it?
Yeah. I really love this question. Basic income is incredibly exciting to me. It has a pretty lengthy history, but in the last couple years, it has had a really large insurgence of interest. Basic income, essentially, is direct cash distributions with no strings attached. So it's unconditional. We are not asking for anything in return. And typically, they are for a certain um, time frame. When it comes to the words that people might hear around direct cash, um, often some people will say universal basic income means for every single individual. Something like a guaranteed basic income could be more population based. So what we're doing at Miracle Messages, we usually use the words basic income, but guaranteed income encompasses that. And the reason behind that is because our programs have a standard of people with a certain housing status or housing history. It is not for every individual, but at its core, it really is giving people cash, not asking for anything in return, no receipts, and having that trust there that people know what they need and they can meet those needs when they have the tools to do so.
Miracle Messages launched its first basic income pilot in 2021. Can you walk us through how that program started and what some of the early results looked like?
Yeah, so in 2021, we did our first direct cash distribution. It went out to 14 individuals, and at the time they received $500 a month for 6 months. They were all located in San Francisco Bay Area. But to get to that point, we listened to our community. And so when Miracle Messages started, we started by doing work that reconnected people, unhoused folks, with their housed loved ones. So this could look like somebody who is unsheltered, in sheltered, in unstable housing, um, and something happens and they lose their phone numbers. Uh, Phone numbers change. Maybe an argument happens, uh, and people didn't know how to call home. And so we started asking people, hey, are there any family members or loved ones that you would like to reconnect with? Surprisingly, people kept on saying yes. We have amazing volunteers who are called digital detectives. And for those first couple years, we were in that reunion space, reconnecting people with their family members. As that evolved and the pandemic happened, these shelter in place hotels opened up, specifically in San Francisco and in many large cities across the US, where people were no longer in congregate shelters, but they were put in these hotel rooms. And in those hotel rooms, the city of San Francisco was like, hey, people are feeling incredibly isolated. What can we do? You guys reconnect people with family members. What can you do? So that's where actually our second program was created, which is Miracle Friends. This is a one-to-one phone buddy match with somebody experiencing homelessness and somebody, typically a housed volunteer. Weekly phone calls and texts. It's somebody who is a listening ear, who cheers them on, and really provides that friendship. It was from those Miracle Friend volunteers that we were hearing, hey, my friend just needs to fix their car. They have a new job opportunity. The gas tank is empty. This is throwing their entire week off plan, right? It's like all of these instances where just a small cash infusion was really going to make a difference. And so The organization was listening to the volunteers, raised $50,000, and that's when we did that small pilot in 2021 to allow for that distribution. We saw really incredible results, and it kind of got us hooked, right? It was like, if this impact could be caused by this relatively small cash infusion, what else could be done? And it really got the ball rolling for us.
And I mean, speaking of that hook, you joined during a pivotal time when the organization was preparing for its second distribution. And so, what was your role during the planning and enrollment process?
Yeah, so in 2022, we started our randomized control trial in collaboration with the University of Southern California. And so our randomized control trial at the time felt so foreign to us. It really put us into this space of rigorous evaluation. And for a long time, we were very boots on the grounds in our community, listening to people. And so it really elevated Miracle Messages into this different space. At the time, I really focused on doing enrollments. So getting people actually into these programs, offering our Miracle Friends process, and being face to face with the 103 individuals that were ending up in that program. We did lots of enrollment efforts, and we couldn't have done it without our community connections and the support of our volunteers, because it wasn't only 103 people receiving money, but they also each had a friend to talk to. And so they were all in the Miracle Friends program, receiving that support too. And so many, many people worked incredibly hard to make that effort come to a reality. At the time, we also had decided to increase not only clearly the number of recipients, but the amount too. So it was no longer a 6-month program, it was for 1 year. And that $500 mark moved to $750. The outcomes at that time were very focused on housing and the impact and tracking people's journey through what it looks like to receive this money.
And as you mentioned, the second distribution involved 103 individuals receiving $750 a month for a year. What were some key lessons you took from that project?
Something that stood out throughout that distribution were the large group of people that we were able to get an insight to, and these new themes that emerge. You know, when you have a group of 14 individuals, it's so small that it can be difficult to see those trends. And one really interesting trend that we saw during that randomized control trial was just how many people were giving that money to their neighbors, to their family members, and within their own communities. And it really stood out because you would see folks who are in not ideal, not, in dangerous and unhealthy housing situations, are employed but are not making ends meet, and yet they are still reporting buying food for their neighbor because they were sick that week and unable to work, or making meals and serving them at encampments. And it continues to amaze me to see people's generosity and this innate desire to invest into our own communities. And it really stood out that people that were experiencing homelessness, getting this cash with no strings attached, were opting in to giving it back.
Wow, and that's really impactful. And I'm sure, I mean, that's one of the answers to my next question, which is what makes Miracle Money different from other basic income programs out there? And I mean, you touched on the nature of, gratuity in the unhoused community that you're serving, but is there anything else that you'd like to touch on that makes Miracle Messages stand out?
Yeah, the way that we're structured is quite different. We're seeing a bit more of this trend pop up, but we are really leaning into a model that is often called cash plus. So it's the idea that cash is not necessarily the solution, but it is a piece of the puzzle. And so the plus is all the additional services that are going on right now. Maybe that's Miracle Friends. Maybe it's that phone buddy program that we run. Or maybe it's the amazing work that's being done by shelter staff, by folks that are helping with the application process, housing navigators. It's adding cash to existing services that are going on and seeing how it can amplify that work.
And I want to move to current programs and the current evaluation of Miracle Messages. And so in December of 2024, your current distributions launched. What do these new programs look like, and how do they expand or shift from earlier versions?
Yeah, so as of today, we have 223 people receiving monthly payments. Our two different programs have two different amounts. Our two distributions both really focus on building relationships in communities. Miracle Messages, we aim to build relational resilience through populations that are experiencing homelessness or housing instability, and the both cash distributions really center that. In one of our distributions, folks are receiving $300 a month for 12 months. All of these people have been in pretty long-term Miracle Friend relationships, and so they have this community connection established. There's been very interesting work and evaluations that have come out in the basic income field that have shown pretty significant impacts, even with small cash infusions. So that's where you can see us testing with that $300 amount. Our other program is really leaning in to collaboration with other nonprofits and amplifying the services that they're doing. And so in that program, we have 5 different nonprofits that we're partnering with across California. They are all enrolling their own participants, and they are receiving $750 a month for 12 months. And so all of the folks in that program are getting more typical wraparound homeless service.
And you're also running an evaluation that looks at more than just financial outcomes. So, can you talk a little bit more about the three domains you focus on, which is connectivity and relationships, basic needs fulfillment, and self perception and well being?
Yeah, so as I mentioned with our two programs, how we really are focusing building relationships and folks building communities. One way that we're actually measuring to see if our intent is matching the results are through our amazing evaluation partners, Grayspace. And yes, so our 3 evaluation domains are basic needs fulfillment, connectivity and relationships, and self-perception of well-being. In this field, it's quite unusual to have those be the metrics that you are measuring against. Most commonly, you'll see that housing result and housing status are the goal, right? The goal is to see people housed at the end of the distribution. Of course, we hope people are getting housed, but we are very realistic in seeing the complexities of the system and knowing that sometimes 1 year of a support doesn't fully capture somebody's full journey going through homeless services. But we do know that major impact is happening. And so, one story that I think captures those domains really nicely is it was one of our first enrollees in the program. It was right before the holiday time. This person's been in our programs for years, and so I know them quite well. And I called them, I told them about the money they'll be receiving for a year, and immediately he's like, "This is fantastic. I don't get to see my sister on Christmas this year, but now I can take my sister and my nephew out to lunch. I can't wait." Right? And so on the surface, that might seem fine, right? Like, oh yeah, taking your friend out to lunch is something that a lot of us experience. But actually, what that means is we're meeting our basic needs fulfillment by ensuring that we're getting a nutritious meal that day. We are having that connectivity in relationships by being able to sit down and spend time with family members, clearly somebody who he has identified as an important person in his life. The self-perception of well-being, of being able, how does it feel to be uncle taking nephew out to lunch? Get whatever you want. We can have dessert for lunch. It's the holidays, right? I can't put words into his mouth, but I'm an aunt. I know what it feels like to take my niece out to lunch. And I love being cool auntie for a day. And so this evaluation is hoping not just to capture this person's housing status throughout the year of receiving the income, but we know that it's nice to spend time with people. We want to see the science and the impact of other areas in your life when you're able to spend more time with people. And that's what this cash does. This cash allows breathing room, it allows flexibility. And it is very hard to put into words the impact of that, of what it means to be actually to take a breath, just even if it's just for lunch, you know?
Yeah, and I really appreciate how you talked about the holistic impact of miracle messages and not just, the statistics that we may focus on, which are important, but you don't want to get your head in so deep that you miss out on what's really important, which is, making people smile at the end of the day.
Mm.
And I want to make one last shift to, challenges and anything that may have been difficult when it comes to public perception. And so guaranteed income can sometimes face skepticism, as we had mentioned earlier. And so what are some of the biggest misconceptions you encounter about giving people unconditional cash?
Yeah, sometimes it feels interesting for me to be answering a question like this because I'm not a recipient of basic income. And so I definitely do talk to people about it, but it's also one of my favorite questions to ask people in our programs and to say, like, hey, you're talking about this impact. What should I say to people when they ask me? Um, and so taking from what I've learned and from what I've heard from people in our programs, it's really rooted in, you know, their blessings don't take away from yours, right? Like it's not a pie and it won't run out. It's really leaning in to trusting people, to putting yourself in their situations, to thinking about if your initial thoughts are around distrust or deservedness. Where does that come from? Right? Put the mirror up for a second and do that self exploration. Maybe you did know somebody, maybe you were burned by something, but it doesn't feel fair to designate hundreds of thousands of Americans in that same lens. And really what I hear from people in our programs is like, it's not for me to judge.
And what would you say to policymakers or funders who are still hesitant about basic income as a viable intervention?
It works. It works. The data exists. The stories exist. So many successful evaluations, countless. It's seen to be an incredibly cost-effective intervention, right? So if their main concern is where will this money come from? There are a lot of ineffective programs that currently exist that cost much more. Um, yeah, there's an incredible group, Mayors for Basic Income, that are really advocating towards this. I'd say look at these people on the same playing field that are doing it successfully and see how that can be replicated. There's really interesting data that's coming out around money that is being dispersed stays within those local communities. So money that's being infused in local communities is being spent there as well. So not only is it helping those individuals, but it's also a way to fuel local economies. And again, the data is there. So look at the studies, many incredible people doing the work. And I would really just encourage people to look at something new.
I mean, with all of this going for you and for Miracle Money and Miracle Messages, looking ahead, where you hope Miracle Money goes next, and what would scaling this look like in an ideal world?
Yeah, something I am most excited about is, the story I mentioned earlier about our friend who wants to take his sister and nephew out to lunch. Again, like I know that something like that feels right. I'm really excited to continue to see like how how can that be measured? How can we link that better and better to other areas of our life? We're starting to do it. I think it'll take us many iterations to really get it right. And I'm excited for that evolution to test ourselves. What questions should we be asking? What areas of life should we be looking at? What are the most important factors? We're hearing a lot from people around even things around housing status that I may think I might not want to be in. They are considering successful housing. And so even asking questions around that, what does success look like for individuals? How can we allow people to set their own goals and measure if their self-appointed goals are to succeed? And of course, my dream is to continue to disperse cash. We can't do that without supporters, without people funding the work. And yeah, I hope that we're able to do it more, bigger, better.
And as a last question, I'm proud to say that we have some very motivated listeners on this podcast. And so, how can they get involved in this movement towards basic income and community-centered care?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it'd be following along to see what we do. Every now and then, we definitely have a call to volunteers. We are always fundraising to continue doing this work. There's also a lot of incredible organizations out there doing similar things to us. Income Movement is one of them that has done community activation really well, specifically with basic income. And that's more of basic income as a whole, not necessarily specifically with people that are unhoused. And so I think it's really important. But the first step is always just becoming aware of the work. If people are listening to this podcast, I feel like you're already on step 5. So, talk about it with people you know, make it your dinner table conversation, post it on your own social media, and little things like that uh, really have such trickle down effects.
Yeah, and together we can really make a huge and immeasurable impact. I want to thank you so much for your time and your experience. And thank you for being on this podcast and sharing everything that you have. And I wish you Miracle Money and Miracle Messages all the best in the future.
Thank you.